Welcome to the Regular Catholic Guy Show with your host, Jeff Garrett, a podcast for regular Catholic men who want to get into the trenches to learn about their Catholic faith, marriage, raising kids, and other Catholic guy stuff. Enjoy the show. My guest today is Tom Clements. Tom is a regular Catholic guy. He's a husband, a father, and a grandfather. He's also a successful businessman. He started and has owned and operated, led several different businesses. He's also sold those businesses. I had Tom on the show today because I want him to talk about his new book, The Path of Joy, Navigating the Stages of Faith. But before we get there, Tom, I'd like to talk just a little bit about your personal faith journey. Tell me, what was your journey like? How's it been?
Well, Jeff, first of all, thank you for having me on the show. I appreciate it. My faith journey is probably fairly typical. I was born a cradle Catholic. I went to Mass regularly. Maybe where it started to differ, I went to Mass even during college and didn't fall away there. But as I got to having children, it just seemed like Mass was not very fulfilling. And I was busy and made excuses for not going to church. But I felt unfulfilled. And I spent, I would say, the next several years wandering and trying to be happy. I even spent a couple of years going to the Evangelical Church of the Open Door. It was an awakening experience. But again, I came back to the Catholic Church because I just didn't feel like that was home. And I came back home and have been working on my faith ever since.
You didn't feel like you're at home when you're at Evangelical Church?
No, I think I felt like there was a lot of enthusiasm at the actual service. There was a lot of praise and worship, music. But then when it was over, it was just, I felt a little empty. I didn't feel like there was the fulfillment that you get when you have the Eucharist, or there wasn't a camaraderie that I felt in terms of whether you're part of the St. Vincent de Paul and performing some level of service, or even selling Christmas trees. It seemed like I just didn't have that connectiveness that I have had growing up in the Catholic Church.
Mm-hmm. So what caused you to come back home?
Well, I think it's that not being fulfilled. I think I always knew that God was the answer. I just didn't want to limit my fun. You know, it was that that looking for the truth, but not wanting the truth to really be as imposing on me as I felt it. I wanted to be in control, which today I kind of laugh at. Okay. We had just moved from Atlanta and I was running my own company. I started getting back into the church, but I wanted it on my terms. Mm-hmm. Much of my service was geared around making me feel good. Okay. Mm-hmm. Jeff, I'm a doer. I like to get things done. Right. And yet the more things I was doing, whether it was, working a food kitchen or doing any kind of other service, I just was getting tired, not fulfilled. Finally, when I said, this just isn't working. I'm running my own company. I've got, 4 great kids, a wife, and I'm looking for all these things to provide fulfillment, and it wasn't working. And I said, what the heck? I might as well turn my life over to God. And I did.
Was there any special moment or anything that just happened, an event that caused that?
Not really. I think it took a couple of years of percolating, but really the expectation that when I achieved different things, a certain fulfillment would occur. And I think when I finally owned my own company and thought I had some level of control and realized I didn't, that really caused me to go deeper and say, I need to make a change, and I need to make the change for God.
So what did that feel like when you came back and you got deeper in your faith?
Well, the biggest challenge, I think, is letting go. I think the idea of trying to be in control, I think as men, we were raised to be providers. We're raised to help navigate our children through life and help everybody get closer to God and all this stuff. But it just seemed like the only way to do that is you got to drag everybody along the path. And, if you raise a teenager, you realize you can't exactly do that. And I needed to step back and say, okay, God, I can't do this on my own. I need your help. That humility was a big step in helping me realize that, gosh, if I have God help me, I'm in good shape.
Tom, you talk about running a business and having 4 kids. How did you balance that? And how did you find time to work your faith into that?
That's a great question. And I think it's one that I think I spent time thinking about, and a lot of people do too. When I was vice president of sales of a up and coming software company, we were about to go public about a year later. And I told my boss I wanted to be a softball coach for my daughter. And he said, absolutely not. We got too many things going on. You travel all over the country. And I said, I think I'm going to make it happen. And I did it. And you make time. If something's important to you, you make time for it. And I did. And it's one of the highlights of my being a parent, just being able to spend time with my daughter. Well, I feel that your faith life is the same thing. If it's important, you can find time. We all have a lot of dead time in our life today, whether it's the internet, TV, or just even other activities. You have to prioritize it. And I think the best thing for your faith life is to, especially your prayer time, is to do it at the same time every day. And I think that first thing in the morning for me is one of my spiritual directors early on told me to spend 15 minutes in prayer every morning. And it has expanded since then to other kinds of activities that I'm involved in.
Yeah, I found the same thing. I found that the morning time is the best. I just needed to get up before everybody else got up, and gave me some quiet time to be able to do that prayer. Because if I waited till nighttime, it was always having kids around, and you never knew if you were going to get it in or not. And sometimes you're just so tired when your head hit the pillow that it didn't happen.
Well, that's right. And what I actually like, Jeff, is getting up before the rest of the group, because that is quiet. I'll pour a cup of coffee and I really can just be alone with God. And I now look at that as my favorite time of the day. In fact, some nights I'm saying, I really want to go to bed so I could get up and have this quiet prayer time with God.
So you've written a book about the stages of faith. Why did you write the book, Tom?
Well, I think I like process. I like figuring out how things go from A to B to C. And I spent a lot of time reading a lot of Catholic books. Just as a for instance, I've read and put in the back of my book, in the appendix of my book, 50 great Catholic books that I've read that I think other people would enjoy too. But as I went through my faith journey, I would read books like The Dark Night of the Soul or Interior Castle, The Seven-Story Mountain, and all these books that the mystics wrote. And I found that the mystics books were too mystical. Okay, they were too, I think they were kind of written a little bit for a different time, because I think people today, with your do-it-yourself and all these different ways of figuring things out in today's world, we want a little bit more of a step-by-step, or how do I put this thing together? And to that end, I just took my own life. I said, well, where am I in my faith? How did I come together with that? And I just kind of tried to put together a process. I sent it out to some guys and asked for some feedback, and I got really great feedback. And they said, wow, this is really good. Is this something that I can send to my men's group, or can I send to my brother-in-law and stuff? And so with that, I said, okay, I've got the stages. Why don't I put some meat between the bones here and actually flesh this out to a book that people could use.
Tom, how did you come up with the 19 stages?
It kind of grew organically as I was just going through it. I was looking at my own faith journey. And in fact, when I started to write the book, I started to talk about people who didn't believe in God and realized that actually was a different book. Okay. I wanted to start with people who had faith, and that's really the part of the core group, people who are trying to grow and search in their faith. And then I looked at, well, what are the different steps that people go through? And I had really a very edifying experience in that I looked at some books since I've written the books, and I find that a lot of the steps are very similar to what I've had. For instance, gratitude's important as a first step. Humility is a very good second step. Prayer is an important part of the process. And they just kind of came out as I did research and as I looked at my own situation. On a go forward basis, from where do I go from here? I kind of looked, again, a lot of research on what I needed to do next, talked to spiritual directors, and went through the steps that I still have to go through. Now, I might have shortchanged that somewhat because I haven't experienced all the stages, but I think I've have had a taste of all the stages.
Tom, who's the target audience for this book?
There's really two groups that I see that stand out. For an individual, it would be somebody who's a seeker, somebody who's know they're Catholic and wants to get deeper in their faith. It could be somebody who's far on the path, or it could be somebody who's earlier in the process. In both cases, though, I think you're going to read some things that might be repetition, but it's kind of like a baseball player taking batting practice before every game. If you're a pro, you really need to go through it. Feedback that I've had from folks is, wow, I knew that, but I forgot about it. And I think there's also a lot of areas. What's my next stage? What do I do next? What do I need to do to grow deeper in my faith? So that's the first group. Mm-hmm. The other group that I'm finding out is because of the way the questions are asked at the end of the chapters and just the conversational tone of each chapter, there are some groups that are doing it for a men's group or men's study, and then dialoguing together, really getting deep into their faith in a very quick way.
That ties into the next question. There's reflections at the end of each chapter. How would you suggest using those reflections?
The way the questions came about, really, as I was writing each chapter, I said, okay, what are the main points I want people to get out this chapter? And what are the things I want them to think about? And in that regard, let's take gratitude as one of the things we want to talk about. Well, if you read about it and you just go to the next chapter, I think you'll have some value, but I ask you to come up with 100 different things that you're grateful for. And in that question, people go, oh, I can't come up with 100. But I say, force yourself to. And you'll find that you come up with things like, well, I like colors. The fact that we have consciousness. I like the fact, music, memory. There's so many things you can think of, and that increases your gratitude. So the questions really causes you to think and go deeper into the answers, which actually, I think, enhances the experience.
Tom, where's the best place to purchase the book?
You can go on to Amazon and buy it there. If you want to just get on and Google Clements, The Path to Joy, it takes you right to that location.
Okay, great. Tom, what else would you like to share with the regular Catholic guys out there?
Well, I think this is something that a lot of men are hungry for right now, to get deeper in their faith. And I don't know if this is going to be transformative for most people, but I do believe it's the kind of blocking and tackling kind of a tool that men respond well to.
Thank you, Tom. God bless.
All right. Thank you. Enjoyed it.
If you enjoyed the show, share it with your friends and relatives. Go to Apple Podcasts, give us a review and a rating. It'll help us to reach more men. We also have a Facebook and Instagram page, Regular Catholic Guy.
God bless.